a variety of organizations that were part of that press conference talking about the challenges before BC's economy. The Metro Vancouver Board of Trade, as I said, the BC Chamber of Commerce spoke, Council of Forest Industries, the Mining Association of BC, the Independent Contractors and Business Association, and the Business Council of BC. The President and CEO of the Business Council of BC is Laura Jones, and she joins me now. Laura, thank you for your time today.
Always great to be on your show, Jas.
Lots to talk about. Ms. Anderson there articulated some of the concerns and frustrations. I guess the question to ask you, first and foremost, is how did we get here to the point where these major business organizations in the province, the preeminent organizations, get together and hold a press conference and say, we got a huge problem here. How did we get here?
It's funny because it is quite unusual for the business associations to come together and do a press conference. We collaborate on things like letters, sometimes where we've got joint concerns, but of course we're also busy with our day-to-day recommendations or the policy files that are top of mind for us, and they're not always. There's usually some differences in terms of focus. So it is quite unusual. That's the first thing I'll say, Jas. And I think we're here because there are a lot of signs flashing yellow and red on BC's economy. And for our joint message really was the economy has got to be, for all the leaders, the economy has got to be job one. Because without a strong economy, we don't have the resources for things like healthcare and education that we all care about. Without a strong economy, we don't have as many of those high-paying jobs that help us feel like things are more affordable at the grocery store. Without a strong economy, our kids don't see a future here, and so they take their potential and their experience and they move out of province. So there are a lot of indicators that are flashing yellow or red.
What are those indicators?
Well, so, I think you just talked about one of them. We're facing record-breaking deficits, and that's not just now, but that's projected into the future. And when we look at those deficits, they're now structural in nature, not cyclical. So sometimes you have deficits because it's just part of the business cycle. Things are down a little bit, but as things bounce back, you get a lift back up, and it sort of balances over a business cycle. These deficits are different. These look to us like they're structural, and
just don't want to cut you off there. But structural, you mean the only way you can actually eliminate a deficit is actually to cut somewhere, reduce spending.
Either cut or the less painful way out, and this is the way that we would advocate, is let's get the economy firing on all cylinders so that we can grow our way out of the structural deficit. Whoever, it forms the next government, whatever happens, this is not an easy problem we now have to dig our way out of. But I think economic growth is got to be part of the solution because, you can think, oh, well, shrug your shoulders, what's the big deal about a deficit? I'll tell you what the big deal is about running structural deficits. Today's deficits are tomorrow's taxes. So we're passing this on to our kids, and that's just not fair.
So you've talked about deficits being one of what other indicators are telling you that we all need to get together as business groups and sort of wake everybody up? What other indicators are you looking at?
Yeah, so I would say 5 years of stagnant growth in the private sector employment market, and you and I have talked about this before, but if you look at the past 5 years, for every one private sector job we've created, we've got 5 public sector jobs. If you look at a shorter time frame, that goes up into higher numbers. And so, but to be fair, let's look over a 5-year trajectory, and that's not sustainable. And that's not saying that the public sector jobs aren't important. Of course, we want more nurses and more folks working in the public sector, but we need the private sector in order to pay for those jobs. So that's flashing kind of red right now for the province. And the other thing is that the government forecasts are showing no improvement in per capita income until 2028. So what I would say is that a lot of people, although the top line growth number, and this is where it gets confusing, right? Because you hear on the news sometimes, oh, the economy's in good shape and GDP is, grown by some amount. Well, GDP is no longer a good indicator because of the population growth. When we look at GDP per capita, what we're seeing is people are feeling like they're in a personal recession because incomes per person, the forecast for that is not good. Now, it's a bit of a lagging indicator, so we don't have the best current data, but when you look out at those forecasts to say that we're not recovering until 2028, back to where we were in 2022, that's a problem, and people are feeling that. They're feeling that when they go to the grocery store. They're really feeling it, and so we got a lot of evidence now that the economy again really needs to be a priority for whoever forms the next government. And that was the message that we were all delivering in slightly different ways today. 7 different business associations standing up saying this needs to be a priority and we need a plan. So we've got a survey, Jas, that we're putting to all the leaders.
Okay.
And I'm excited about, actually we're going to put the survey on our website too so people can look at the questions we have. But I'm excited about seeing the answers to that survey. And that's coming out in the Vancouver Sun on October 7th. So we're really excited to see what the plan is from the different leaders.
I was reading an op-ed just recently from the ICBA, and they're saying since 2021, BC's created about 19,000 private sector jobs. In that same period, Alberta has created well over 200,000 private sector jobs. And that's very frustrating because you're losing a lot of British Columbians, I'm sure, who are heading over there to work rather than staying here in British Columbia. And that's part of the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we all know someone who's feeling like there's no future here and talking about moving out of province. And we're seeing that also flashing red in the data because while we've got more people coming internationally, the people who live here are starting to vote with their feet and leave the province. And not always because they want to, but because they just don't feel like there's a future here. So absolutely.
My guest is Laura Jones, President and CEO of the Business Council of British Columbia. She is part of many business groups that spoke up today in regards to getting any future government, the next government, to focus on the economy because our numbers aren't very good these days. As we heard today, the provincial forecast came out and we are forecasting for 2024-2025 that the budget deficit will hit $8.9 billion, just under $9 billion. That's $1.1 billion higher than was forecast just a few months ago. You'll see the Jas Johal Show back after the break.